There's a quiet terror in growth that most people mistake for laziness, procrastination, or lack of motivation. But look deeper. Beneath the surface of your so-called stuckness is a body that's protecting itself from expansion. Not because expansion is wrong, but because expansion is unknown. The nervous system is not designed to make you happy. It's designed to keep you alive. And what's unfamiliar, even if it's good for you, confidence, abundance, visibility, is treated as a potential threat. That's why every time you take a step toward your dreams, some invisible wall rises inside you. Your throat tightens, your chest clenches. The voice in your head whispers, "Who do you think you are? What if you fail? What if you succeed and lose everything anyway?" That's not weakness. That's protection. It's your body saying, "I don't feel safe being powerful yet." Because somewhere along the line, power became unsafe. Maybe you were taught to shrink so others wouldn't feel small. Maybe standing out meant standing alone. Maybe success made someone else uncomfortable, and you learned to associate joy with guilt. So now, every time you get close to becoming the version of you that's bold, authentic, and unapologetically alive, you freeze, you numb out, you scroll, you binge, you delay. Not because you don't care, but because your body remembers what it cost to shine. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." So pause and ask yourself, is this fear really about failure, or is it about being seen, fully seen? Growth isn't a mindset, it's a process of relearning safety. And you can't think your way into safety, you have to feel your way there. Your potential doesn't scare you, it triggers the parts of you that had to hide to survive. And now, you're being asked to step back into the light. There's a strange kind of ache inside you, not from what you've done, but from what you haven't done. A subtle, persistent weight that follows you into your quiet moments. It doesn't scream, it lingers, like a ghost. Not the ghost of who you were, but of who you could be. The confident one, the one who speaks without shrinking, the one who doesn't apologize for being too much, too sensitive, too ambitious. You don't fear that version of you because it's unrecognizable. You fear it because it feels dangerously close. You can sense it in the decisions you almost made, in the words you almost said, in the boundaries you nearly held. And that closeness is what hurts the most. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the parts of ourselves we suppress. Not because they are evil, but because they are unclaimed. Power unclaimed becomes projection. Potential unexpressed becomes pain. Every time you ignore your deeper impulses, your creativity, your rage, your brilliance, you're not just avoiding discomfort, you're burying someone. And the soul doesn't like to be buried, so it reminds you, not with anger but with longing, not with force, but with dreams that won't die. You think you're unmotivated, but really, you're in mourning, grieving the self you keep postponing, and still, that self waits. Not in resentment, but in readiness. Ready for the day you stop negotiating your worth. Ready for the moment you stop asking permission to exist fully. Ready for when you realize that the only thing more frightening than becoming that version of you is never becoming it. Because the real tragedy isn't failing. It's abandoning yourself in plain sight. Growth sounds beautiful until it actually begins. Because real growth doesn't just add things to your life, it subtracts. And often what it takes away is the old version of you, the one who kept quiet, the one who never raised their hand, the one who smiled while breaking inside. You look back at that self with strange tenderness, not because they were strong, but because they endured. They got you through chapters where you didn't have the tools, the language, or the support. They survived, and that matters. But now you're starting to dream louder, to say no with a little more certainty, to want more, not just for survival, but for truth. And here comes the guilt, because stepping into your potential feels like betrayal, like you're leaving behind a loyal friend, even if that friend was fear in disguise. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the lifelong path of becoming fully yourself. But no one warns you that this journey often begins in the ruins of who you used to be. You don't just grow into your power, you outgrow your pain. And that hurts, not because it's wrong, but because it's honest. You may find yourself apologizing to people who preferred the smaller you, and to the self who kept shrinking just to stay safe. But here's the truth. You don't owe guilt to the version of you that kept you alive. You owe gratitude and a promise that their suffering won't be the end of your story. You don't dishonor the past by moving forward. You honor it by becoming the person that wounded child always needed. And in doing so, you carry them forward, not in fear but in freedom. You've been told all your life that humility is holy, and it is. But somewhere along the way, humility was confused with self-erasure. So when you begin to tap into your own strength, you feel a quiet shame. A voice inside whispers, "Who do you think you are?" You worry that confidence will make you unkind, that standing tall will cast shadows, that claiming space will make others small. But this isn't true power. This is the fear of power shaped by those who misused it. Arrogance doesn't come from knowing your worth. It comes from forgetting others have worth too. Real power, it's not loud, it's not cruel. It doesn't need to dominate or prove. It grounds you. It teaches you how to walk with fire and not burn others. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the part of us we're afraid to see. For many, the shadow isn't just rage or jealousy, it's brilliance, it's influence, it's capability. You've hidden your light for so long, you've mistaken the glow for something dangerous. But power isn't poison, it's potential. What corrupts isn't the strength itself, but the absence of self-awareness. You don't have to choose between being powerful and being kind. You can be both. In fact, the world needs you to be both. Not everyone who rises forgets where they came from. Not everyone who speaks loudly forgets how to listen. Power in the hands of the wounded, who have healed, can become medicine. So don't shrink out of fear of becoming someone you're not. Remember, stepping into your voice doesn't mean silencing others. It means showing others they can speak too. And that is power in its purest form. You dream with your eyes open, but when the moment comes to step forward, you freeze. Not because you don't want it, but because you secretly believe you don't deserve it. Somewhere deep inside, a silent contract was written, that others are meant for greatness, not you. That success is reserved for the special, and you're just ordinary. You brush away compliments, minimize your efforts, and call your brilliance luck. Because accepting your own power feels like a lie. This isn't modesty, this is inherited shame. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and that includes your gift, your intuition, your capacity to rise." When you were younger, maybe you were told, "Don't get ahead of yourself, don't be too much, stay in your place." So you did, and now, you've built a life around being small. But what if you were wrong? What if your dreams aren't delusions, but direction? What if greatness isn't something you earn, but something you remember? Because worth isn't handed to you from outside. It emerges when you stop abandoning yourself. You weren't born unworthy. You were born whole, and then slowly forgot. This is your call to return. Not to ego, not to arrogance, but to the knowing that you are meant to create, to speak, to lead. Greatness doesn't ask for permission. It simply asks you to show up. So the next time you're tempted to downplay your magic, pause. What if the version of you you're afraid to become is the version you were always meant to be? You stay where it's familiar, not because it's fulfilling, but because it feels predictable. You call it safety, but in truth, it's just the absence of threat, not the presence of light. Comfort zones wear disguises. They masquerade as stability, but deep down, they're silent prisons, softly padded with routine and fear. Carl Jung warned us, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents, and many of us inherited their fears, not their freedom. You were taught that to be responsible is to avoid risk, that it's better to stay in a life that doesn't hurt, than to chase one that sets your soul on fire. But what if you're not safe there? What if your comfort is quietly suffocating you? Because every time you settle for less, a part of you disappears. And that whisper inside, the one that says, "There's more," grows quieter with each year. Growth demands discomfort, not chaos, not recklessness, but a sacred kind of uncertainty that cracks open who you thought you were. You will never meet your highest self inside your lowest fears. Safety isn't staying where nothing happens. It's stepping into what must happen, with courage, with trembling hands, with a heart that says yes, before the mind catches up. The ego wants protection, but the soul wants expansion. And sometimes, you must leave the false security of the known to find the true sanctuary of the real you. So when your body resists the leap, breathe. When your thoughts scream, stay where it's safe. Ask, safe for whom? For the past, or for the future calling you forward? You weren't meant to live in pause. You were meant to move. When people speak of light, they often picture softness, sun rays through trees, a warm glow on a calm morning, a safe and peaceful warmth. But light is not always soft. Sometimes it burns, sometimes it shatters darkness so violently, you wish you could go back to not seeing. Carl Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. It drags hidden truths from the basement of your psyche, truths you buried with years of distraction, with smiles that masked pain, with success that was hollow at the core. You thought awakening would be beautiful, and it is, but only after the breakdown. Because before light heals, it exposes. Before it warms, it blinds. And this is why you fear your own potential, because your light is not just tender, it's dangerous to everything false in you. It threatens your excuses, your smallness, your attachments to who you used to be. It doesn't ask for permission, it erupts. You want transformation, but not the fire that forges it. You want truth, but not the disruption it brings. But you cannot selectively awaken. You cannot step into your highest without facing the parts of you that kept you low. This is what people don't tell you. Your light will ask you to let go of comfort, of control, of identities that no longer fit. And that's not gentle, that's sacred destruction. So when your inner brilliance begins to rise, don't shrink, don't apologize for the heat. Let it burn what's no longer real. Because the truth is, you're not scared of darkness. You're scared that your light is more powerful than you ever imagined, and that once it's unleashed, nothing will ever be the same again. It's easy to confuse the two. Comfort feels good, predictable routines, familiar faces, the same thoughts on repeat. You tell yourself, I'm fine here, and maybe you are, but fine is not the same as free. Carl Jung didn't chase comfort, he chased truth, and truth doesn't live inside the walls we build to protect our egos. It lives just beyond them, in the tension, the questions, the unknown. Comfort numbs you. Peace awakens you. Comfort says, don't rock the boat. Peace says, dive into the water, even if it's cold, even if you don't know how to swim. You've built a life that feels safe, but safe isn't always real. Sometimes, it's just a cage decorated with the illusion of happiness. You're not really resting. You're hiding. You're not really peaceful. You're just avoiding discomfort. And in that quiet avoidance, your soul starts whispering louder, aching for something real, something earned, not handed to you by routine. Because true peace comes after the storm. It comes after you've faced the voice in your head that says, you're not enough. It comes after the tears, after the letting go, after the leap into the unknown. It's not found in staying where you are. It's found in growing into who you were meant to become. So ask yourself, is this peace, or just quiet resistance? Because comfort can silence your potential. It can trick you into thinking you're whole, when you're just unbothered. But peace transforms you. It's the stillness after truth, the silence that follows integration. It doesn't come cheap, but it comes honest. And maybe, just maybe, your fear of leaving your comfort is the only thing standing between the life you know and the life that's waiting to be lived. But healing isn't a makeover. It's not a costume you put on. It's not about replacing your past. It's about reclaiming it. You keep chasing versions of yourself you think are more worthy, happier, cleaner, untangled. But Jung didn't teach us to escape the self. He taught us to integrate it. Real healing isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about realizing you were never broken to begin with, just buried beneath the guilt, the shame, the lies you were told about your worth. You don't need to become someone else. You need to return to the parts you exiled. The child who once dreamed without limit, the teen who felt too deeply, The adult who still aches and doesn't know why. You think you're evolving by moving forward, but sometimes healing means turning around, going back into the fire to rescue the pieces of you still trapped in it. And no, it's not glamorous. It's messy. It's crying in rooms you thought you'd never revisit. It's forgiving people who never said sorry. It's looking in the mirror and saying, I am still me, and that is enough. Carl Jung called this individuation, not becoming better, but becoming whole. And wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means you stop cutting yourself into pieces just to fit into other people's stories. You don't need to be someone new to be someone healed. You need to be someone true. So maybe healing isn't a transformation. Maybe it's a homecoming. Not to the fantasy self, not to the masked self, but to the authentic self. The one who always knew that being fully human was never something to escape, but something to embrace. But comfort isn't peace. Comfort is familiar. Peace is free. And the two often live on opposite ends of the soul. You stay in places that suffocate you, because at least they don't surprise you. You repeat the same habits, cling to the same people, walk the same loops in your mind. Not because they bring you joy, but because they don't challenge your wounds. Carl Jung taught us that the psyche doesn't grow in safety. It grows in tension, in the conflict between who you are and who you're meant to be. But the ego hates discomfort. It would rather live in a known hell than risk an unknown heaven. So you settle in jobs that drain you, in relationships that numb you, in routines that make you forget you're alive. And yet, something inside you keeps whispering, this isn't it. This isn't peace. Because real peace isn't the absence of chaos. It's the presence of meaning. Peace isn't scrolling endlessly to forget your day. It's creating a life you don't want to escape from. It's not avoiding discomfort. It's walking through it, knowing you're building something deeper on the other side. Jung would say, you'll find peace, not by chasing pleasure, but by facing the shadow, by sitting with the loneliness, the fear, the hunger for more, and not running from it this time. Comfort feels good, but peace feels true, and truth, more often than not, is uncomfortable at first. So maybe peace won't come wrapped in soft pillows and warm distraction. Maybe it'll come like a storm, shaking everything loose, tearing down the illusions, so something real can grow in their place. And maybe that's the kind of peace your soul has been craving all along. Not comfort, but freedom. You wait for a sign, for clarity, for the fear to disappear. But the truth is, the version of you that's ready will never show up before the leap. It only emerges after you jump. You think readiness is a feeling, that one morning you'll wake up fearless, confident, certain. But Jung would remind us, certainty is the enemy of transformation. It's in the not knowing that we become. You say, I'll do it when I'm more skilled, when I'm stronger, when I've healed. But that moment never comes, because your ego keeps moving the goalpost. So you stay set. Because I'm not ready is the perfect excuse to avoid pain, rejection, failure, success. Yes, even success frightens you, because if you step into your potential, if you really try, there's a risk you might actually change. And the ego doesn't want change, it wants control. But readiness isn't about being unshakable, it's about being willing. Willing to stand on trembling legs, willing to move forward even as your hands shake, willing to trust that the future self you long to become is already waiting on the other side of risk. Jung knew that the path to wholeness isn't paved with certainty, it's carved by courage, by those moments when you say, I may not feel ready, but I'm going anyway, because growth doesn't require perfection, it requires movement. So stop waiting to be ready, start showing up raw, unpolished, messy, but real. The truth is, you've always been more ready than you believed, and the longer you wait, the more you betray the part of you that already knows, this is the moment, now, not someday. Beneath the underneath the doubt, the fear, the overthinking, there's a quiet voice, not loud, not demanding, but steady, true. It doesn't speak in sentences or logic, it speaks in pulls, in longings, in that ache that never quite goes away. You've felt it in the moments when the world falls silent and something deep inside whispers, there's more than this life you've settled for, more than the roles you've been taught to play, more than the masks you've been wearing just to survive. That whisper is your soul, and it remembers who you are, even when you forget. It sees the light you've buried, the power you've denied, the fire you've tried to extinguish, because you were told it was too much. But Jung would tell you, the soul doesn't forget. It waits, patiently, silently, until you finally return to it. It doesn't care about your resume, your follower count, or how many mistakes you've made. It only wants one thing, for you to live aligned, not with expectations, not with comfort, but with truth. And when you ignore it, life becomes a slow, dull ache beneath the surface, a heaviness you can't explain. But when you listen, even a little, things begin to shift. The path opens, not all at once, but one step at a time. Your soul doesn't scream, it doesn't argue, it just knows, and so do you. If you're brave enough to be quiet, to turn inward, to trust the wisdom that was planted in you before the world taught you to doubt it, you're not lost, you're just afraid of what you already know. But the soul is patient, and it will wait for you until you're ready to remember.